Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone. My name is Pran, and I will be your host for today. I would like to welcome everybody to the fourth ASE webinar series brought to you by ASEAN Sustainable Energy Week 2020, or in a short name, ASE. As you have seen in the video that just now, that this exhibition is ready to welcome everybody to join the event in September this year at Bangkok, Thailand. So today's webinar, we will discuss under the theme, Integrated Energy System for Sustainable Cities, Empower Cities Post-COVID-19. Before we start, I would like to quickly mention on the webinar's rules. As all the microphone and video of the attendees have been muted, if you wish to ask any question to our speaker, please click on the Q&A button below, and I would suggest you to mention our speaker name and followed by the questions. In case of any internet or technical issue during the webinar, you may watch this webinar on our Facebook page, ASEAN Sustainable Energy Week, which is go on live at this moment, and you can share with your friends. So let me start the sessions now. So I would like to hand over the stage to our moderator for today, Mr. Peter Lundberg, the Head of Operations at Asia Pacific Urban Energy Association, or APUEA. Hello, Mr. Peter. You can have this stage.
Thank you, Pran.
Yes.
And hello and welcome to this webinar on the topic Integrated Energy Systems for Sustainable Cities, how to empower cities post-COVID-19. As Pran mentioned, my name is Peter Lundberg, and I'm a head of operation of Asia Pacific Urban Energy Association here in Bangkok. First, I want to thank everyone. I want to thank Informal Markets and the ASEAN Sustainable Energy Week team for co-hosting this webinar with us. First, I will start to make a short introduction of the session before we move on further. Cities occupy only 2% of the world's landmass, but they consume over 70% of the world's energy, and they account for more than 70% of the global CO2 emissions. And there are 33 megacities with a population of 10 million or more in the world, and 17 of them are in Asia Pacific. In 2030, it's projected that there will be 43 megacities globally, and 35 of them will be in the Asia Pacific region. So it's clear that there's a strong economic growth and a strong growing energy demand in the Asia Pacific region. And this rapid development means that cities will have significant challenges to meet this growing energy demand in a sustainable way. The session aims to discuss how to seize the opportunity to empower cities and overcome challenges and developing sustainable urban energy post-COVID-19. The session will be discussing local urban energy markets, collaboration with cities, and challenges and opportunities to develop sustainable urban energy. The session will offer introduction of successful cases and important urban energy stakeholders, as well as provides insights in local energy markets in the Asia Pacific region. We will include topics like integrated multi-energy systems, district energy, including district heating and district cooling. The session will start with a presentation from Ksenia Petrichenko, who is an Economic Affairs Officer with the Energy Division at the United Nations Economic and Social Commission for Asia and Pacific. And the topic of her presentation is Sustainable Energy in Cities, from Global Goals to Local Actions. The session will continue with a panel discussion on the topic Accelerating Development of Sustainable Urban Energy in Asia Pacific, which is moderated by Michael Jacobson, who is the Executive Director at the Asia Pacific Urban Energy Association. I will also welcome the panelist in that session, who is Mr. Martin B. Peterson, who is Head of Sales at Energy Industries at ABB, Denmark. Mr. Anna de Foucault, Head of District Cooling, Energy Southeast Asia. Per Dahlin, who is the President of the DEVCO, District Energy Venture, Stockholm. And Mr. Gary Chui, who is the Regional Manager for North Asia and Pacific and Pacific at Johnson Controls. And after the panel discussion, we will continue with the Q&A session, where you can ask questions to our speaker and our panelists. So if you have a question, as Pran mentioned, that you can write that in the Q&A, form, and then address the speaker name. Okay, I will now hand over to Ksenia Petrichenko to present about sustainable energy in cities, from global goals to local actions. Welcome, Ksenia.
Thank you very much, Peter. And hello, everyone who joined the webinar. It's a great pleasure for me to be here and start this webinar with more regional perspective from the organization I'm representing, ESCAP. For those who don't know, we have a number of member states across Asia and the Pacific, and we support them on achievement of sustainable development goals. And my division is focusing on SDG 7, which is the topic of our today's presentation. So Peter started by introducing how important cities are and how many megacities and different kinds of cities in the world. And here you can see on the map the distribution of cities by different population. And we see that cities are historically the hubs for development and ideas and creativity, and have been attracting many people and enforcing migration towards cities, driving urbanization rate higher and higher. And by 2030, number of people living in cities is projected to reach 5 billion, which will be more than 60% of global population will be living in cities. In Asia and the Pacific, urbanization rate has also been increasing during past 3 decades. And in 2018, the region has become urban dominant for the first time and is expected to and already hosting 2 billion people in Asia and the Pacific cities. By 2040, it is expected that 1 more billion people will move to urban areas in the region. So definitely for this region, the cities are key for addressing all important problems and challenges. And Peter mentioned some of them. Of course, today we are focusing on sustainable energy and climate change. But we also know that 2020 has marked our calendars as being one of the most challenging years during our lifetimes. And I don't need to even talk about this map because it's probably one of the most popular global maps this year. And you can see how clearly, even from just the first look, the number of cases of COVID-19 kind of mirror the position of big cities. Due to density and concentration of economic activity, cities have become the centers for spread and outbreak of COVID-19, and so many countries and cities are battling with this disease at the moment. And as this is the most urgent problem the world is facing right now, and maybe many city officials are prioritizing health and safety of their citizens, it is very clear that sustainable development goals and all the commitments which countries and cities have made before to sustainable future are integral strategies for combating the current pandemic and also addressing other global challenges. So from the point of view that sustainable development goals were set in the global level, and cities are in the front line to implement them, cities are becoming the key actors to implement actions on different sustainable development goals. Many countries have multi-level governance, which allows cities to introduce policies and actions and align their policies and strategies with sustainable development goals. That's why the topic of SDG localization is becoming crucial during these times. It's very important to put the effort into translating global goals into national policies and making sure that they are implemented at the local level. So SDG localization is the process of defining and implementing and monitoring strategies at the local level for achieving global, national, and subnational sustainable development goals. And it's a very complex process. It requires involvement of a number of stakeholders and ensuring that the policy and institutional environment is enabling to implementation of those goals. It also requires a strong data ecosystem to make sure that the data is being collected and being tracked and monitored across different SDG indicators in order to support the establishment of baseline and support evidence-based decision-making processes. And of course, the mobilizing adequate financing for sustainable projects and for projects which support SDGs implementation is crucial. COVID-19 is very likely to impact a number of SDGs implementation in a negative manner. At the same time, we already see that the impact on environment is positive in the short term. We already see the data that in many countries, the energy consumption and greenhouse gas emissions and air pollutions have decreased due to lockdowns and reduced economic activity. But we all understand that this is only a short-term effect, and in order to make sure that we move to the new normal, as everyone calls it, and that new normal is better than the previous one, we need to make sure that we integrate the strategies and solutions to make sure that we are building better together in a more sustainable way. So today we are focusing on sustainable energy, and among 17 goals, SDG 7 is the one which focuses on ensuring access to affordable, reliable, sustainable, and modern energy for all. It is very much linked to a number of SDGs, including the SDG on climate change. Though we are very much focused on the implications of global pandemic and the health crisis, and we know that more than 500,000 of people have died due to causes which can be attributed to the pandemic, the number of deaths associated with climate change is much more difficult to estimate, and World Health Organization estimates it at 250,000 deaths per year, which is probably larger underestimated because it's very hard to capture all the effects of climate change. But actually, these days, given the fact that air pollution has become such a significant problem, researchers are referring to air pollution as the pandemic. And there is data that shows that about 9 million people per year die prematurely due to exposure to high levels of air pollution. And it is shortening the lives of other people by approximately 3 years globally. And Asia and the Pacific is one of the most affected regions by this problem. So SDG 7 specifically focuses on the strategies which can help mitigate the implications of air pollution and climate change through ensuring universal access to modern energy, implementation of energy efficiency strategies, and increasing the uptake of renewable energy. For that, we need to have integrated technologies, policies, institutions, and people in order to bring together and establish very solid strategies for implementing those solutions. And I'm looking forward to the panel discussion to dive into the examples of those solutions. In my presentation, I will just quickly look at the 3 pillars of SDG 7 and what are the maybe key topics we need to discuss and which can be relevant for cities as well. When we talk about energy access, we usually look at access to electricity and access to clean cooking. And very often it is more attributed to rural areas. And in Asia and Pacific, the progress has been quite good on electricity, on the electrification, though 200 million people are still lacking access to basic electricity. And about 1.8 billion people do not have access to clean cooking. In the urban areas, 250 million people still live in slums and informal settlements. And they lack access to modern energy services as well. Therefore, coordination between housing policies, social housing, and urban planning is crucial in order to ensure that people have access to modern energy services, as well as the linkages to other two pillars of SDG 7 on renewable energy and energy efficiency should be incorporated to make sure that these services are sustainable. In the view of global pandemic, the cold chain systems and access to sustainable cooling is becoming also very crucial in terms of cooling in health facilities, as well as storage and transportation of medicine and potential vaccine. As for renewable energy, we can see that in Asia and Pacific, the modern renewable share is still quite low, though it has been increasing. Unfortunately, Asia and the Pacific is still one of the regions which heavily relies on coal, and approximately 80% of global investments into new coal power generation is still coming from this region. So in the recovery plans of cities and countries, it is crucial to shift investments towards more renewable projects. And from city perspective, the city can improve self-sufficiency of its energy sector by transitioning to local clean energy sources such as solar, waste energy, and wind, and benefit from the stimulus which can be spent to mobilizing finance on renewables, and also creating jobs and improving the flexibility of the power system through smart grids, electricity storage, and integration of renewable energy. As for energy efficiency, though it is the third target of the SDG 7, I think it should come first, because energy efficiency, when implemented across different sectors, can significantly reduce energy demand and cut energy costs. So that can introduce a lot of energy savings and cost savings, which can be used for other projects to support the population of the cities. During the time of COVID, as I mentioned, the energy consumption of many countries and cities reduced, but it also shifted the burden towards households, which were when people were staying mainly at home due to lockdown measures. So a number of households below the poverty line, even with energy access, are struggling with increased energy bills, and energy efficiency in buildings and energy efficiency for household appliances can significantly reduce the energy consumption and hence energy costs. I think I'm running out of time, and I'm sure we'll be discussing a number of those solutions during the panel, but I just wanted to let everyone know that at ESCAP, at Energy Division, we also focusing on supporting cities, though we usually work directly at the national level. We recognize the importance of support for cities and building capacity at the subnational and local level. And we have a current project on localization of SDG 7, where we're aiming to support cities with analytical work and analyzing the status on SDG 7 in different cities. This year, we're focusing on Southeast Asia and ASEAN countries. We also have 3 deep dive cities for which we are developing SDG 7 city roadmaps. And this is much more in-depth analysis and scenario development, where we'll look at different technological and policy options for each of the cities to implement SDG 7 in a more effective manner. And we're, of course, also looking at increasing capacity through e-learning and peer-to-peer exchange. So if there are cities attending this webinar, if you know any cities who can benefit from that, please let them know to reach out. We're very much open to collaboration. And I will conclude my presentation by putting up this quotation from Antonio Guterres, UN Secretary General, who delivered his speech to IA Summit yesterday, and specifically emphasized the importance of choice that we are facing right now, and that we can't go back, and the future should be more sustainable, and how it is important to shift investments from fossil fuels towards renewable energy, which is reliable, clean, and economically smart. So thank you very much. I'm looking forward to the panel discussion, and we'll be happy to answer to your questions at the end of the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Senia, for your presentation and for showing this outlook on Asia Pacific, how and SDG goals, and how ESCAP is helping cities to implement SDG goals. So Senia will be with us the whole webinar, and she will be standing by for your questions at the end of the Q&A session. So now we'll move on to the panel discussion, and basically the panel discussion will do a deep dive into different solutions that can help cities to move forward to be more sustainable, and introduce more urban energy systems. So I will now hand over to Michael for the panel discussion.
Thank you very much, Peter, for the introduction. I will also looking forward to have Xenia back later for the Q&A. As you can see here today, we have a number of different actors in the urban energy sector with us today. In the panel, as Peter already presented, we have representatives from utilities, from solution providers, but also advisory in regards to urban energy. I would like to start with explaining how we at APUEA are looking at urban energy. So we are seeing it from a holistic system perspective, and urban energy's cross-sectoral nature as it is, where we have an opportunity for integration and achieving benefits like flexibility, efficiency, reliability, and other benefits according also to the SDGs presented by Xenia. Following the brief introduction of the panelists, I would like to give an open question to the panelists and give them the opportunity to present themselves to some extent. So I would like to hear from all the panelists what is your focus in regards to the geographical focus. Obviously, Asia Pacific is a large area, a big region, but also in regards to urban energy disciplines, what is your focus and what is your offerings or services or solutions that you're providing to the markets? I will start by asking this to Anna, and then we can go on to Per Dahlin and Gary, and then Martin in the end. So I hand over to Anna here.
Thank you, Michael. So let me start by thanking Asia Pacific Urban Energy Association for associating me to this panel session. My name is Anna De Foucault. I am heading the District Energy Department for ENGIE Southeast Asia. ENGIE Southeast Asia is a cluster under ENGIE Asia Pacific. We are a fast-growing team of over 2,000 employees with presence in Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, and the Philippines. We provide tailor-made integrated solutions for our customers in commercial buildings, industries, and cities. And in the field of district cooling, we are developing, financing, and operating projects. ENGIE is a major player in district energy with more than 3,500 megawatts of cooling capacity installed and more than 70 district cooling systems in operation worldwide. Here in Southeast Asia, we have 2 assets in operations in Malaysia and in the Philippines, and 2 in development here in Singapore. District energy is a key focus to provide low carbon energy at a competitive tariff. And ENGIE has developed a center of expertise dedicated to the topic since 2018 in Singapore.
Thank you very much. And now we move over to Per. Per, I think you're muted.
Works better now. Yeah, thank you. Thank you all for the event. Well, starting with, DevCo, which is a project development and business consulting company that's been around for over 20 years. Started as the management team of the Stockholm utility, where we built up the district cooling in Stockholm in the late 90s, which today is still is the largest system in Europe. And since that been, supporting developers, cities, and utilities, large utilities to establish new systems and utilities globally. So when we come to the region, the DevCo and Nexity team, which is the management platform, we are active and will be active in the whole region. And we are focusing on high efficient, profitable, and Kigali compliant thesis systems, which means we introducing systems where we avoid the old and CO2 nasty refrigerants. So when we come to the offerings, the areas, I would put them into three sectors. One is and extremely important now in the beginning is the awareness raising and the capacity building, where I see that the Asian Pacific Urban Energy Association is the perfect platform. It's like the sister of the European Euratom Power, and to increase the understanding for especially cities, developers, and others in the region. So that's the awareness raising and capacity building, which would be focus one. The second is, of course, to initiate business cases supported by and multilateral and regional fundings to create portfolios of development prospects. And as co-developer with cities, property developers, and regional or global multi-utilities to execute these high efficient district cooling systems. So it's a little bit like a three-step, but we will act in parallel.
Thank you, Per. We move over to Gary.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. This is Gary Choi from Johnson Controls. Very pleased to be here, to be able to see everyone and learn a lot of things about the urban energy and the district cooling contest. So for me, it's I'm working in the Asia Pacific, North Asia, and the Australia market. So basically, Johnson Controls is a company that we are focusing on the building technologies solutions, that we have a diverse portfolio of products, which is covering the HVAC, BMS, fire, and security, and particularly for HVAC, which is relating to the district energy. We have a portfolio of products which is trying to match up with the increasing demand of the urban energy systems, from the matching of the energy source to the demand, which we can have solutions and services to provide that can help to address both the district cooling and the district heating by having a portfolio that can use with different energy source on that.
Thank you, Gary. We move over to Martin.
Yes, hello, and thank you very much for the invitation. I hope you all enjoy and can hear me. If I go with the focus on the geographical side, I would say that Southeast Asia and East Asia as an overall focus area for us, especially on the district cooling in the south and district heating in the north. So combining the district energy and ABB, where I'm coming from and actually representing globally. ABB is a global company, and we have offices in almost all of the major cities and countries in this region. So more or less representing the whole of ABB. When it comes to the disciplines, I would say that actually I would echo what you were saying, Michael, that we are trying to make sure that the benefits we see from district energy, meaning the efficiency, the reliability, and also, let's say, the environmental benefits of having a centralized solution is what we are striving for, including, of course, we have a lot of products, everything from the control side, electrical instrumentation, inside, outside the buildings. But I think what is most important for us is to be a part of, let's say, from the very beginning of a given project, because we feel that some of the experience we have on developing this type of projects starts in the very beginning, on understanding the process, because at the end of the day, the process is going to give you, the consumers, the cities, the benefit. And it is easy to say that we want to do something. What is very, very difficult is actually to execute and know beforehand what you need to understand before doing so. So I would say that we at ABB like to be engaged in the very beginning, also with companies like Engie, that is already in the early stage with a given municipality, driving the whole technical part on this, because there is a political part and there's a technical part, and we of course are a major part on the technical, and DevCo is on the financial, so kind of comes hand in hand. But I think sometimes we miss the opportunity to do something which is better than the standard, and especially with the energy efficiency, having a project like in the Marina Bay in Singapore, where just by introducing collection of data from the consumers drive down CO2 emissions more than 23,000 tons of CO2 a day compared to a normal situation. That's what we can bring to the market. So yeah, that's all for me.
Thank you very much, Martin, and everyone for the introduction to your focus here. So as I started to mention, we're talking about urban energy and larger systems, so to say, which is a little bit different from just delivering components for a building or so on. We're talking about multi-energy system, integrating electricity, gas, heating, cooling, storage, in some cases combining just heating and cooling, or so on and so on. And we are often covering larger areas. We are, as I mentioned before, cross-sectoral. So the question here is, how do we actually develop these kind of system? Who do you actually work with? We have got a little bit insight here of who you are working with, but I would like to address Anna at Engie. Who are you actually working with to develop these kind of systems? We saw from Xenia in the beginning that they're obviously working with the sustainable development goals, but how do you do to develop these kind of projects? Who do you work with?
Here in ASEAN, we are working with multiple stakeholders. It can be cities, it can be government agencies, or universities, or airports, usually through tenders to delegate the concession of their utilities. But we are also more and more engaging with private real estate developers in order to jointly develop tailor-made solutions for the areas they want to make attractive on the long term.
Thank you. How about Garrett, Johnson Controls? Who do you typically work with when you're developing or working on these kind of projects?
Actually, for us, we do have a team of leaders on sustainability and also for government affairs, which is more on dealing with policymakers. And actually, we are seeing that policy drivers is an important ingredient in terms of driving the urban energy or large-scale system, or the adoption of the large-scale systems, such as the building codes, energy standards, or anything like a carbon reductions roadmap or targets. These are the things that we are seeing that that would help to engage, starting with the policymakers and then create public awareness. And from there, we also look into each region, because every region is different, especially on the energy mix that we are talking about. We need to not only have one single solutions for that, we need to develop a diverse portfolio so that we can fit in the energy mix used by certain regions and to meet the demand there.
Thank you very much, Gary. I think you pinpoint quite some interesting things here. I mean, in regards to the diversity, I think it's important to mention, not least for the audience from not only around the region, but also around the world, that the local urban energy markets in Asia Pacific are extremely diverse. We have different climates, different economical development. There are different sectors that are dominant at different locations simply. So when we talk about the development here of urban energy, there are to some extent tailor-made systems to some extent, right? And then I would like to address Per at DevCo. When developing these kind of projects, we heard here about some of the important factors to be in place, but what are other challenges when developing, example, district cooling systems? And just unmute there.
Yeah, so I'm learning. I can just agree with what we just heard. It's well, implementing these complex systems is a multi-stakeholder approach, first of all, and it covers all from the policies to the whole picture, the whole business case, which means that from our point of view, it is to add, well, with a lot of the references and from the global, to adapt it to the local situation. That's most important, and to have that team in place to support the development. And also, as I mentioned earlier, that it's extremely important with the capacity building of also on the city level, to understand all the well, advantages with, well, supporting. It doesn't necessarily means that the city needs to be an active stakeholder, but they need to be there to supporting and seeing that it's a long-term good solution. So what we are doing is to get in, well, adding, well, the governance and tier one management team perspective to it, to do it in the right steps, and getting the business cases in place with all its risks and complexity in the beginning to start mitigating and developing. So that's the initial phase is extremely important.
Thank you, Per. On the same topic to Martin at ABB, what are the challenges that you have seen? I know you have developed a number of huge energy infrastructure projects here in the region. So could you elaborate a little bit about the challenges you have faced also working with cities?
Yes, I would say that Per had a very good point. The capacity building. I mean, normally you go in and you have a very holistic idea about what you would like to do in a city, but making sure that we focus on what will drive the motivation of that particular city. I've seen a number of places where we start in a very holistic way to look at water, energy, telecom, lighting, sewage system, I mean, all in once. And of course, the plan is good to have on a holistic way. But I think that what we see is at the end of the day, driving this is, of course, also to have a financing and the payment in place. And energy as such is probably one of the easiest places where you can increase efficiency, lower cost for the city and also for for the citizens, and lower the CO2 emission. We have seen that so many places, especially in China, but also back in our backyard in Scandinavia, that if you start there, it can to some extent pay for the other initiatives that then comes along. So I think that focusing on energy is the right thing to do, because it takes so many other things with you. And of course, district energy, I mean, just the fact that, I mean, especially in urban areas where the cost for land is extremely huge. I can take the very good example is Singapore, where the chillers and the piping and everything is 5 storage below sea level. So you do not have any machinery on top of any buildings, which means that it's a good investment. And that just makes sense, and it pays for something else. So I think that we are struggling with the capacity building to understand what is maybe not the most political, fashionable way of thinking, but it makes sense also in the short term. I think that is what we're struggling with.
Thank you, Martin. I would like to address Anna there, who is to some in the place really to take the initiative early to really develop these kind of systems. And when you are facing city representatives or developers or so on, we heard about the importance about capacity building, policies, things like that. What is your reflection now, working in not least Southeast Asia here? What is the status really in that regard? Where are the cities standing in regards to awareness of these kind of energy infrastructure?
I would say that engaging with cities is of prime importance to develop large-scale sustainable solutions. For example, following Paris Climate Agreement, many Southeast Asian nations have established their sustainability roadmap as part of a concerted effort to fight climate change. If I take the example of Malaysia, it has announced a target of 20% renewable energy in its power generation mix by 2025. For Singapore, the country aims to switch to emerging low carbon alternatives to help reduce the country's carbon footprint. So they are looking at carbon capture, storage technologies, hydrogen. In Indonesia, the country took a climate pledge that targets up to 40% reduction in their CO2 emission by 2030. So it is crucial to set strong partnerships between governments and private companies such as ENGIE. There would be multiple benefits, such as renewable energy adoption, and investment would be much stronger with joint actions. It would enable to find broader climate change mitigation solutions together. And lastly, it would ensure that all the possible resources are mobilized, both from public and private sector. Today, we face a lack of comprehensive master planning for district cooling systems, and the development of district energy, which is a long-term approach with multiple stakeholders, would strongly benefit from a support at city level, and there are many solutions to be implemented together.
Yeah, thank you. Just to follow up there, and I mean, there are challenges obviously to develop these kind of projects. I mean, we have mentioned many of them here. We have many stakeholders that has to get together, compared to individual solutions, and I bet you have seen the competition from individual air conditioning system and things like that. Could you elaborate a little bit how you succeed there to really convince the local players or the local governments or the developers to that actually to take this front-loaded investment does make sense in the long term?
This exercise to compare the competitiveness of the district energy versus what we call the standalone decentralized solution has to be led on a project basis. And indeed, if we look at a certain development, we will always make a comparison with the costs that would be induced in terms of total cost of ownership for standalone solutions. In order to reduce actually those costs, when we look at the comparison, we can engage the cities. The cities actually can provide actions in order to step in order to make those district energy solutions more competitive. I can give you 3 examples or main axes where we could benefit from the actions of city to make a district energy competitive. The first one is actually at the project initiation. What we have observed is many district networks were developed following a major public event or a national reconstruction policy, which was used as a catalyst. So if I give you some example, in Europe, we had the 1998 Lisbon International Exposition, or the 2004 Barcelona Forum, or the 2012 London Olympic Games, which triggered the development of district energy systems that are now operated by ENGIE. But public authorities, they can also play a fundamental role as a regulator or a market facilitator by helping in order to get construction permits, or overcoming some regulation requirements, or by delivering subsidies at the initiation of the project. They can also ensure the financial profitability of the project by becoming the anchor tenant, the initial clients and off-taker for this district energy system, or by guaranteeing long-term connections. Another aspect also to initiate a project together with the city would be to discuss what would be the most attractive area to develop such a district energy system. So we can look at a location with a high density, a good accessibility to install the network, some space to install storage if we can benefit from a suitable electricity tariff, or a proximity to a river or waste to energy plant in order to create synergies. The second axis where city can be involved is in the growth of the project. They can help by developing some incentives for the buildings to connect. For example, we could quote the architectural constraints we see in Paris, where cooling towers are not allowed close to public monuments. So it's very suitable to have an underground network which will deliver chilled water for those buildings and the buildings in the neighborhood to get their air conditioning. There are also some fiscal aspects where the city can contribute. We have the example of some cities where the final customer would benefit from lower VAT rates if they are connected to an efficient energy supplier for their cooling. And district cooling is usually a very efficient way to produce cooling and get those tax incentives. And another also support would be to implement an obligation to connect in a certain area. We had the case for the London area where the new buildings, even after the Olympic Games, who are developing in the area, have to take their heating or cooling from our district energy network. And the last axis I would like to emphasize in terms of making those projects competitive while working with the municipalities would be to contribute to the financing of the project itself. For example, the city can offer some land as an equity contribution. Or finally, tax incentive as a source of finance. So of course, all those aspects can be taken into account and help to demonstrate and build on the long term, because we have more visibility regarding the off-takers to develop more competitive district energy versus a variety of standalone solutions.
Thank you very much, Anna. I would like to continue there to address Per with the big risk that I'm in my own district energy bubble, but I feel that for district cooling, there is a revival lately, I would say. There is a greater interest for developing district cooling projects. You, Per, you have been along here for 20 years ago. You started with district cooling systems and developed them. At that time, you would face similar issues in regards to competition with other solutions, or the how the city supported. What did you see then, and what do you see now?
Yeah, thanks, Michael. I think the situation is very similar, and if we take Sweden, that went very heavy into district cooling when we started in Stockholm, and today 38 cities, more than 25% market share for district cooling in Sweden, which is a little bit strange, so far north. But I also see now with the policy package in Europe, where it's more defined what are the frames. I see the second wave also with this phase down of refrigerants, that we had the same trigger in the late 90s coming back. So I see a very similar pattern if we look at from a European perspective, that it was a lot of initiatives during late 90s, up to 2009. And now it's coming back, and we have predicted in Sweden that it will be a 50% increase now in the next coming 7 years. So the triggers are pretty much the same. And as you say, cities were also supportive in seeing that, and even now I read in the paper that Stockholm is taking a negative CO2 city perspective in the short term. So this initiatives comes in. So cities are extremely important that they have the framework. It doesn't necessarily, as I said before, be that they are an active stakeholder, which they are in a lot of Nordic or European perspective, but supportive. And I would say also for the Asian side, I would say one big challenge there is also the building codes, that we have situation where we have centralized systems in the buildings. A lot of VRF systems and split systems can be a hurdle because it's hard to connect. And I think that is a challenge when we come to this region to get enough density of developing new systems. So that's a part of it, yeah.
Thank you, Per. I would like to address Gary at Johnson Controls. Do you want to fill in on something in what just was said by Per and Anna?
Yeah, I just want to jump in, maybe go back to the challenges that you mentioned about. Actually, we are seeing the challenges come from three aspects: economic, social, and sustainable. Most of the time that we are seeing is really some sort of a lack of awareness when we are looking at APAC. Generally, people urban energy systems or district cooling system are still something new to them. And awareness, knowledge, and also expertise are something that we are lacking in these regions, and we need that. I think through associations like you and platform, which is very helpful, will be very helpful in engaging policymakers, industries, public, to create this kind of awareness and also facilitate best practice sharing. Like for the social aspect, I just heard from Christina in her presentations that we are seeing close to 9 million of people, which is of death because that is relating to air pollutions and also relating to climate change. And these are the things that urban energy systems can be a solutions on that. So on the sustainability efforts, also on the carbon reductions, water savings. So these are the things that other than the economical considerations, if we are able to create awareness, more awareness on this, I think that will help in terms of addressing the challenges that we have in terms of driving urban energies or district cooling systems.
Thank you, Gary. And over to Martin on the same topic to just fill, we started with the challenges there, and then based on what Anna, Per, and Gary have said, is it something you would like to add?
Well, I think that the challenges, the very overall challenges has already been raised. I think that when we look at a specific project, and I think what is important is that it is both very, very crucial that we have the political angle that is driving the whole change. But then when it comes down to the actual projects, I think it's very important that you separate the overall goal and the political development with the actual project, because what we have seen a number of times is that the mix is not very good for the progress. So what we advise is that as soon as you get to the conclusion that you want to drive this, you kind of take it out of the political agenda and make a separate project or organization that can actually drive this together with the different partners that you see on this panel and other panels, because then you understand the end goal and you are driving for the end goal. And we know how it is in any city and any political environment. It goes back and forth. So I think the obstacle that we have seen, that as soon as you do not take it out of the political agenda and make it a project or an organization, it gets stuck in something. And then you as a supplier or provider are stuck with things that you do not know. So that is actually one of the challenges, but I also think that we can overcome it. So that's from a very practical point of view.
Right. Thank you, Martin. Thank you, Martin. Before we move over to look at the opportunities, I think we should touch upon the fact that we are in the COVID-19 pandemic. So I would like again to go around, hear all the panelists, how this pandemic has influenced your operations at the moment. Starting with Anna from ENGIE.
Sure. Regarding the COVID-19, there were two aspects. We had some short-term actions which were deployed globally to deliver service to ENGIE customers in the effort to battle the COVID-19, and this on each continent. If we look at Europe, we had about 90 Italian hospitals where ENGIE has provided free electricity, gas, and technical assistance for the construction and the extension of medical units. If we look at the US, ENGIE was working on a facility upgrade needed by General Motors plant to manufacturing up to 200,000 life savings ventilators. In Middle East, Tabrid, our utility company based in UAE, ensured a cooling supply continuously to a number of medical entities. And here in Singapore, ENGIE has about 450 employees working on the front line in Singapore hospitals on the preventive and corrective maintenance of facilities. And there we have put emphasis on providing special effort to divide the teams in order to support the operation while strictly adhering with the safety rules of the hospitals. This is for the short term, but on the longer term, while having to prioritize addressing COVID-19, the climate emergency is still prominent. And we believe our customers, they understand it, and they will get back to thinking and investing to transform their businesses for long-term sustainability as soon as feasible. Some example we observed in the region suggests that now is the right time to invest in sustainable solutions. I will give you the example of Changi Airport here in Singapore, which has used the travel slowdown to its advantage. They decided to shut down Terminal 2 for 18 months and bring forward some renovation which were planned at a later date. And this would allow them to actually open the upgraded terminal earlier than originally scheduled. So on the same idea, in Southeast Asia, many NG customers have seized the interruption period due to COVID-19 to study plans to shift to cleaner energy. And within NG, we continue to focus on facilitating the transition toward a carbon neutral world, while offering to our client cost-effective solutions and low-risk solutions with minimal cash outlay requirements. And this is to accompany our client to reach their environmental objectives in cost-effective manner.
Thank you very much, Anna. Super interesting. So it's a switch simply in your business on short term, but also you already see that the city sees some opportunities, at least here and there, right? Super interesting. Over to Per, what have you seen and how it's affected you in DevCo, but also your clients?
Yeah, I think I can just agree with Anna about that. It's we see a lot of reflections after chaos comes action, and that it has even increased the speed of initiatives towards acting for district energy or district cooling initiatives. First it's, as you said, a little bit chaos, but now it's like restarting the economy. It's a very good way, starting point to do the transition towards a green, profitable energy future. So in one way, I think it has speeded up a lot of these initiatives. That's my summary of it.
Thank you, Per. Over to Gary. What do you see there?
I think for short term, people might be looking at some sort of slowdown or holding on their capital investment. But however, on the other way, they are also looking for the means of how to upkeep or upgrading their existing equipment through some retrofitting. And for us, we are serving 150 countries, and with the local service presence that are there to help the customers on this. And I think this pandemic is also changing somewhat the people to design, in terms of design and use and manage the building and the occupancy. Things like the occupancy monitoring, threat detections, contact tracing, indoor air quality. Those are the somewhat few subjects that is coming up, and they are now shifting to relooking at what sort of integrated building solutions that can have to cover all this. And in the longer terms, I do see that it's a positive thing, especially for the urban energy systems. People are going to see a more intensified focus in terms of the energy saving. And that's something that I would see as a favorable thing in terms of driving urban energy systems.
Thank you very much, Gary. Over to Martin.
Well, I think that one of the short term, but probably also in the long term, is that we together with customers, employees, and everyone else had a chance to lay a little bit back and look at it from a different perspective, and that has actually meant that. And on top of that, everything needs to be done remote. So it has really accelerated in a few months all the things that we do remote, because we cannot go to a plant or a installation. So that has accelerated. At the same time, the data collection and data analysis has also accelerated. I think that what we see that comes out of it is a new understanding of it sounds strange, but what we are actually doing, because suddenly there are places where you cannot go. There are things you cannot see. So suddenly data is being the one that you need to believe in. We have a lot of customers that has the millions and millions of data, but actually do not know what to do with it. So a lot of the jobs that have been done during the last couple of months is together with them really understanding and pinpointing what is the what's the need for them to understand how they can optimize, do it more efficiently, and making sure that their end customers get the amount of heat and cooling needed. So I think it's a new reality. I think that there will be an increasing demand on understanding the processes, which I think is very good, because that brings also data for, like Anna was saying, from NG to actually put the proof on the table that this brings value. We have lowered the CO2, we have optimized, we have done the efficiency. As an example, we were engaged in a large pumping station for a district cooling company, trying to understand how much value and how efficient this could be operated if we just looked at the data. And we are talking about 30 to 40% lower energy consumption just by looking at that pumping station. Because they had the time to lay back and say, okay, what do we need to do? What is wrong with this this particular pumping station because it uses too much electricity? That's what we are going to see. And I mean, the UN were saying that it is nice that the Sustainable Development Goal 7.3 should actually be 7.1, and I completely agree that energy efficiency needs to be higher on the agenda, because we have such a huge potential before introducing a lot of new capacity, understanding how we can use the capacity we already have more efficiently. And to me, district energy, having the piping system connecting the consumers with whatever type of energy you can collect during that that way from main production to end customer, that's really where we see the benefit of district energy in an urban context.
Thank you very much, Martin. Super interesting. So we have touched upon both the challenges and the opportunities here in regards to COVID-19. I think it's super interesting that we see new ways of working and new priorities, and definitely something that will continue to some extent even after the pandemic. For the audience sake, if you would like to highlight some of your success cases, some cases that you really would like to put on the table, that these are successful cases in regards to district energy or other urban energy projects, would it be, please share that with the audience. We can start with you, Martin, who are on.
Yeah, now I'm the first one. That's a new one. I think when it comes to district cooling, I already mentioned the Singapore project. I think what I would like to highlight is probably a very distant city in the upper outskirts of the Himalaya, where they had no district energy at all. The understanding of what district energy was very low. They knew that they would have CO2-free electricity from a hydropower plant, but they didn't really know how to use it most efficiently. So together with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Denmark, governmental and design institutes in China, we together developed a plan for 5 zones to deliver district heating via local electricity boilers and heat pumps for one of the most efficient district energy projects in China. And that shows, it started in 2009, and we just finalized it last year. It's a long development, but wow, what we get is CO2, no CO2 emission. We got away with all the coal. They burn wood, small stoves locally. You saw the diseases from the small kids. All that is gone. That's a success story. That's what district energy can bring. And when you look at the possibilities you have, yeah, I know it's a long time, but it's worth it when you look at it now. So I think that's probably one of our great success stories in this region.
Thank you, Martin. Over to Gary at Johnson Controls. Do you have any cases that you would like to share with the audience?
Yeah, sure. But my is in Australia that I have worked through. It's called Barangaroo project, which is a redevelopment of an old dockyard area, a commercial development with 3 office towers, 6-star hotel, and also a high-class residence. So the developer used a district cooling, and it's the first time for them actually to use the Sydney Harbour water for the district cooling plant. And we supply the chillers for district cooling and combined with the use of the variable speed technology and harbour water. And this project has become some sort of a sample for the countries because this development has been certified as a carbon neutral community with water positive and also zero waste. So I think at the very beginning, planning is definitely a very important step. At a very early stage, the developer has very clear targets on what he wants to achieve in terms of the sustainability on that. So, by getting into different technologies, as what I mentioned, the VST on the chillers, the seawater coolings, that helps a lot in terms of the reductions on the chiller plant consumptions, which is a major consumer of electricity on that. And at the end, we end up with a carbon neutral, I would say a first carbon neutral community in Australia.
Thank you very much, Gary. So it's another carbon neutral or zero carbon emission project. Over to Per at Devco. Do you have any cases you would like to share?
Yeah, I think in the region, most are in the development stage. If we look from a bigger perspective, I think we have quite some very good showcases from how it's Stockholm, Copenhagen, Amsterdam, Vienna, etc., which can be kind of role models. Also from on the global, from the Middle East, and I think also there will be quite a few pilots now popping up in the Caribbean and Latin America, which we are engaged in. A little bit further in the development chain, but we see that the same is for the region, and hopefully also that we can, well, not just these hybrid systems that one or two seawater air conditioning, the extreme high efficient solutions can also be adopted now. There are a couple of really interesting cases. And when it comes to operating, as I said before, we are often working inside the teams of bigger brandings, if we say so. A few of the really large ones that are up and running, we've been in, but it's behind other brandings.
Thank you very much, Per. So Anna, of your projects that you are developing, is it something you would like to highlight especially?
Sure. I have a couple of projects. For example, Megajana district cooling in Malaysia. Megajana is a joint venture between Cyberview and NG Services Malaysia. And we are the sole provider of district cooling system services in Cyberjaya, which is a city nearby Kuala Lumpur. Megajana is supplying round-the-clock chilled water for air conditioning to a variety of customers, including data centers, malls, and office towers. It's done through 2 interconnected plants, which are equipped with thermal energy storage. And we provide 77 megawatts of cooling to more than 50 buildings, which are connected to the district cooling. One of the key enablers of this project was the electricity tariff that we can benefit in Malaysia, which is dedicated to thermal energy storage projects, and it made this project very competitive in order to supply air conditioning at a competitive price via the use of thermal energy storage. Another success story I would like to share here in Malaysia was in actually quite recent, during the COVID period in last June, when NG Southeast Asia and Sunway Construction have signed a memorandum of understanding to set up a joint venture company in order to boost Malaysia's environmental sustainability efforts. So the idea of this MOU is by leveraging on NG's expertise in integrated and green sustainable environmental solution, the JV will work over all the value chain, from engineering, financing, construction, development, operation and maintenance, to deliver turnkey district cooling systems for greenfield and brownfield urban development projects. This will include some of Sunway's portfolio. Sunway is a major real estate developer in Malaysia, and it includes office very broad variety of buildings, such as office, retail mall. There are educational institutions, medical centers, theme parks, even theme parks and factories. And the objective of this factory, of this joint venture, is really to contribute towards accelerating the adoption of district cooling technology in Malaysia.
Thank you very much, all of you. And to the audience here, don't hesitate to write questions if you have that, or contact the panelists specifically for these projects, of course, to get more detailed information and so on. We are running out of time a little bit, so I would like to move on to the Q&A session. So I would like to hand over to Peter Lundberg for the Q&A session, where I will support as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Michael. And thank you for a very good discussion. A lot of interesting topics have been discussed. So we have got a number of questions. Actually, we have some questions that were submitted beforehand, and we also got some questions that were sent now. But please write your questions in the Q&A button, on the Q&A button, and we'll try to raise it. Okay, so I will start on the topic of district cooling here. We have a question: what is the district cooling market potential in Thailand? And maybe we can actually address the whole of Southeast Asia. So I would like to give that question to Anna and hear what you have to say. Yes, Anna,
I didn't manage to unmute, sorry. Sorry, so regarding, the question is regarding the district cooling market?
Yeah, the potential of district cooling in Thailand, or we can include maybe Southeast Asia. Is that your region?
Yeah, for sure. So Thailand, as well as the other country we are covering here in Southeast Asia, has a strong potential regarding district cooling, because you have, let's say, a weather that is very favorable to the usage of air conditioning all year long, and it makes it even more an even more stronger potential for district cooling, because we could run at the best efficiency of our district cooling plant over the whole year duration. So this is true for Thailand as well as for the other countries. And we see for me, I've been there in the region over the past 3 years, and we've seen a growing number of projects in the region for district energy. So we feel that the cities and the large-scale developer are more and more convinced that district energy is the sustainable way to produce efficiently air conditioning for their area.
Okay, great. Thank you, Anna. Is there anyone else who wants to reply to that question? Okay, then we can move on to another question. So we got a question here about energy policy and framework, and is there a need to relax or change policies and frameworks to increase the development of district energies, the systems in the Asia Pacific region? So I would like to maybe address Per at first, and anyone else can chip in after that.
Yeah, I think policy issues will definitely come, and we are definitely not in the same stage as we are in Europe from that perspective. But I think there are some on the building codes that has been mentioned earlier that could definitely be needed to see that we have efficient off-taker solutions. Meaning centralized systems. That's one point. The other is that from a policy perspective, I think it has to grow with the awareness in this. I think we will see a lot, and as you mentioned earlier, it's very different situations, different countries, and I aim to now, when I'm stepping in as the chair of the Asian Pacific cooling group, to start defining what if there are, what are the needs and what can it be appointed. So besides this awareness raising and capacity building, we need to also look into the policy side. But I would say it's a little bit too early to see where we're standing. It's a little bit a shattered pattern as it is right now in general. But right. It will come.
Thank you, Per. Anyone else who want to address that question? Okay, then we will move on to the next one here. So when we look at the ongoing digitalization in the energy industry, so there are many new tools available, and I think, Martin, you were kind of discussing about data here, and I think maybe I will address this to you, Martin. How can the digital tools help develop integrated energy systems, for example, AI or other tools?
Thanks. Well, data is just a tool for analyzing more or less the optimal distribution of heat or cooling. If we take the example of a district cooling network, at the very start of it, you introduce all the right products and tools, but what you are left behind is understanding your end customer, because all start at the end customer, understanding the needs of that particular customer, and then drive back to how much production do you need. So catching data and understanding weather prognosis, the way that our end customers are behaving. There could be sometimes we see contracts where you need to have that amount of cooling, or you need to make that temperature. All that is including and used in an AI to then predict how much you need to produce and for how long it takes to go through the piping to reach the end customer. And the more you understand of that pattern, and that's why you use a lot of historical data, you use prognosis and AI understanding to predict this. We see that most of the time, the inefficiency you see in the networks and how it is operated is because you're doing a lot of things manually, and you believe that you understand what the need is for the end customer, but that is wrong. You can lower the CO2 emission, you can lower the forward temperature, you can lower and forward cooling to optimize 20, 30, sometimes more percentage, because it really makes a difference if you use data correctly. So there's a huge potential, both already installed, but probably even better before you install it, so you dimension it correctly.
Right. Thank you very much, Martin. Anyone else who want to address that? Okay. Can someone here share the key difficulties to introduce district cooling concept to developers in Southeast Asia. I'd like to address this question to Gary. What is your, what have you experienced?
Okay, I think for developers, many of them are actually they might be seeing what the government is leading them. So always from the places like Australia, or even for my hometown Hong Kong, we are now building the first district cooling system. It's the government who take the lead of that. And after that, creating the awareness. And the reason for government to build a district cooling system here is really because of the carbon reductions target that they set on that. So policy is the driver on that. And I think for the developers, many of them might be looking at, again, as I say, the challenges that I earlier mentioned about. Could be economic, social, and sustainability. And in many cases, we tend to look into the economic aspects when we are looking into the district cooling systems. However, we do realize that urban energy system or district cooling system can also bring a lot of benefits in terms of a social and the sustainability aspect. So I would say if we are able to bring that up and have better awareness to the public or to the developers on that, I think that would help for them to understand that the district cooling systems will not be only an economic factor in the equation.
Right. Okay, so we have touched a lot on district energy and district cooling. So there's a question here about renewable energy that I would like to address to Senia. So what country in Asia Pacific has the most advanced development of renewable energy?
Thank you. It's a tricky question because it depends, of course, how you look at renewable energy and what you mean by development of renewable energy. From perspective of SDG 7 and the target of SDG 7 on renewable energy, we look at the share of renewable energy in the final energy consumption of the country. From that perspective, there is also a question of modern renewables and traditional renewables. So if we remove the traditional renewables, like traditional biomass, there are countries like Tajikistan or New Zealand who have a very high share of renewable energy in the final energy mix. But in case, for example, of Tajikistan, it's because they very much rely on hydro. So it doesn't mean that they have very advanced, for example, renewable energy policies or energy efficiency policies. So, but from a point of view of, for example, renewable energy market, probably China from the global perspective would be one of the leading countries who is the leading market for solar thermal, for example. So it really depends how you look at renewable energy, and I would say I wouldn't be picking one single country, but for those who are interested in exploring this question more, we at ESCAP have Asia Energy Portal, which looks at different countries in Asia and the Pacific and looking at different statistics and data and SDG 7 indicators. We also have policy profiles for every single member state. I think on one of my slides in my presentation, I have a link, but you can also just Google Asia Energy Pacific portal and explore yourself. Yeah, I think that would be my answer to this complex question.
Hey, thank you very much, Senia. Michael, did you have some questions?
Yeah, I think I can gather some here. So this is addressed to Anna at NG, that you mentioned about the policy of preferential electricity tariff in Malaysia. So in regards to that, what do you, is there any possibility to lobby for such policy in other countries, but also in other from other countries where you're operating, are there any policies there that we could learn of in order to try to lobby that across Asia Pacific? Or
Yes, so for sure, it's always a possibility and something we are supporting to lobby or to work together with the governments. It can be usually hand in hand with associations like APWEA or United Nations Environmental Program, where we participate to workshops in order to raise awareness on what would be the different solutions that can be implemented by government or by cities in order to encourage the development of district cooling. So it should be, as it was mentioned, a good peak tariff in order to facilitate the development of thermal energy storage solutions. We can also think about what I mentioned earlier, some tax incentives, some areas where a connection to district energy would be encouraged by VAT, lower VAT for the end users. There are different aspects that can be actually looked at for the different stakeholders of a district cooling, because we are talking about the developers, but they are not the only ones that we address when we develop a district energy. There is, of course, the cities that can be looking at benefits such as lower CO2, lower green heating island effect or things like this, the developer who wants to make his area attractive, and there is the building owner and the end user who wants some comfort, some reliability, some quality that we can provide by district energy. So we have to really take into account what is our customer needs and look at what we could encourage with regulations or actions that would facilitate the development of such solutions.
thank you very much. I just also for the audience sake, I think we should, if you could elaborate a little bit about the complexity with your district cooling projects, compare, for example, even though we're talking huge investments in electricity production where you have one offtake agreement. Here, in some cases, I imagine you have to get the customers by yourself pretty much in some developments, right? Could you elaborate a little bit about that, how it works in different projects that you have, and what are the nature of that simply?
Yeah, exactly. That's a very good point. It would be actually what we call the commercial risk related to the district cooling, because we have to invest a huge part of the capex upfront. So at the beginning, in order to build the district energy plan, the thermal energy storage, and usually if there is a looped network for additional redundancy, this has to be sized for the final development. And some buildings will come the first year, but sometimes we have some example where the last building of the development would connect only 10 years later. So some investment have to be brought upfront, and this would indeed make it very difficult to demonstrate the competitiveness of our tariff versus individual chiller plant. So there are different ways to mitigate those challenges. As I mentioned, what would be interesting in capital in order to develop a district energy network is to have an anchor tenant, a first important off-taker, and that would help us to actually bear a part of the initial capex. And then after, actually, the solution of district cooling, what is very interesting with it is that it's flexible, it's modular. So we would have some investment that will come later only when the future buildings will be connecting. So we have to find the right balance between the initial off-takers, which needs to be of a sufficient size. I was talking about the density, and we have to also us to play on the procurement and the efficiency of the operations in order to make the project competitive. But it's not an easy way, and that's why I was mentioning the long-term planning, some risk sharing, either with the cities, either with the developer, in order to make these projects work.
Thank you.
Yes. So we've got a question here to Senja again, and it's about an initiative that ESCAP has launched recently with UNEP. It's a global new initiative to help cities to develop carbon neutrality and sustainable energy. Can you share a little bit about this initiative?
Yeah, thank you for the question, and it's great to know that the word spreads about this project, which we are already implementing together with UNEP. In fact, my last slide on my presentation was introducing this project. So the project is to support cities in Southeast Asia, starting from Southeast Asia, to develop the understanding of their efforts on SDG 7 localization. So this is just the first part. In that part, we are developing an analytical framework which will allow cities to assess their status on SDG 7 across several SDG 7 indicators. And we're working with a number of cities already through our partners with a number of city networks, which is a great help. And I think ASEAN Smart City Network is participating in this webinar. So as the second part of this project, we focus on several deep dive cities for which we are preparing together with the city government SDG 7 roadmaps, which looks at different scenarios for achieving SDG 7 at the city level, and the different technological and policy options and required investments to achieve them. So that work is much more in depth. We just started with 3 cities. Jakarta in Indonesia is one, another one is Kawayan City in the Philippines, and the third one is actually not the city, but a subnational region of Iskandar in Malaysia. So we will be definitely sharing updates from that work. And together with UNEP, we also established the Integrated Urban System Partnership, which I believe a number of panelists are part as well. And this is a growing partnership which will be looking at different aspects of integrated systems and looking at different projects and case studies across different cities in Asia and the Pacific, but also around the world, and bringing the knowledge about good practices on different solutions and policy instruments. So from that work, we are looking at developing either a database or a publication or some sort of a knowledge product which will feature those good practices, and we will be communicating them to cities as well. So if you're interested in any aspects of this project or partnership work, please feel free to reach out to me, and I will be happy to provide more details on that.
Thank you very much, Senja. I have a follow-up question in regards to the COVID-19 situation and the work that ESCAP is doing and how you're working with cities. How has it been affected? How is it difficult to work now, and how do you see will the work change now for the foreseen future, for near future?
Yeah, that's a great question. We were quite worried when COVID-19 became a really big problem, and we are largely at ESCAP still working from home, as probably many of you also doing. But actually, the interest from the cities in this work and in SDG 7 specifically and 2030 agenda is quite high. So we during this first phase of the project, which I was talking about, we developed a questionnaire and we're focusing on development of the methodology of data collection framework, but also reaching out to cities and asking them to submit filled out questionnaire and the data, shared the data with us. We also had 2 virtual training sessions with a great participation from cities. I would like to emphasize that especially cities in the Philippines are extremely active. I think it's probably one of the most decentralized countries in Asia and the Pacific, where cities have a lot of autonomy. So we received a lot of interest from the Philippines. So in this regard, I think I was pleasantly surprised with the feedback, but of course, city governments are very much occupied with a response to COVID-19, and through this work, we also trying to inform them and encourage them to focus on sustainable projects as well and link them to the response to COVID-19. And I think there is a very good level of understanding at the city level that despite of the global health crisis and current pandemic, they cannot abandon their sustainable energy projects, and they see a lot of synergies as well. So I think many cities are looking at current pandemic as and crisis as the opportunity, and it's great to see that.
Thank you, Senia. I would like to ask all the panelists here if you have any questions to each other. Feel free to address them. Or maybe everything has been said already. So I think it's time to start to wrap up the session. I think we have had a very interesting presentation from Senia, and also very interesting discussion from the panelists. I would like to mention a few things here regarding some updates regarding the Asia Pacific Urbanization Association and our activities during next year, actually. So we have recently been awarded, together with Informa Markets, to host the 2021 Global District Energy Climate Awards that will be held here in Bangkok in June. So if you're welcome, you're very welcome to go to the website to check out this more. It's the www.districtenergyaward.org, and we can say that the application for applying for this award can be sent in during the autumn. So if there are not any more questions, I would like to thank everyone, to all the speakers and panelists, and thank you to the audience very much as well. So I would like to hand over to Pran from ASEAN Sustainable Energy Week to give some final words for this session. Pran, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. So thank you very much to all the speakers for your time, and APUEA for helping us host this webinar. So thank you once again for sharing knowledge and your expertise to the audiences today. So, and of course, we are having the more webinars coming up. So maybe please make sure that you follow us on our social media account, ASEAN Sustainable Energy Week, so you won't miss any information from us. And you also can watch today's webinar once again, or download the speaker presentations. Or if you miss previous webinar series, you also can watch the video back on our website, www.asew-expo.com. So once again, I would like to invite everyone to visit our exhibition in September 2020 in Bangkok, Thailand. So now the pre-registration is now open. So please visit our website for more update of the information of this event. And once again, so thank you so much for joining us today, and we hope to see you again in the next webinar. So stay safe and take care, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Yeah, thank you.